Hello everybody, today I'm going to be taking a look at Firelock Games' new full hard plastic 2-player starter set for Blood and Plunder. This is the Blackbeard versus Maynard starter set, and it comes in a whopping box with everything you need to get started into the age of piracy. First off, we're going to take a look at some of the paper and card components. So we have the Blood and Plunder rulebook. This is a softback, 160-page rulebook. It contains the full rules for everything you need to get started into playing the Golden Age of Piracy. So Blood and Plunder plays across both land, sea, and amphibious games. And this explains how you can do them all. It starts off with the easier, accessible land-based games. Then it adds in artillery, so your cannons, swivel guns, that sort of thing. And then goes into how you navigate water in a boat, sloop or sailboat, that type of thing, and how that works. So everything you need to play a game in the 18th century is here. It also has the lists for both the pirates led by Blackbeard himself and the British sea dogs led by legendary commander Robert Maynard. I will say this only contains the two lists, so you've just got your British and your pirates, but it is the full rules, so it will get you started with everything in this box. If you decide you want to progress into other areas, either the 17th century, or you want to stick with the 18th century and just expand, then you want to pick up one of the expansions. So Beyond the Line or Raise the Black Flag. Both contain a lot more information about the periods and additional nations that you can play. But yeah, excellent full color set of rules with everything you may desire in there. Apart from the rules themselves, you also get a gaming mat. So if you are just starting with Blood and Plunder and you don't have anything yet, this will get you started with what you have in the core game. Double-sided. So one side is the delightful blue waters of the Med or the Caribbean, depending on where you want to play your games. Other side is land. The mat itself is 34 inches-ish square. So not quite a 3x3, but it is the largest size the printer could actually produce these mats on, and more than sufficient for your initial games. Only when you start playing larger sized battles will you want to go up into bigger sort of 4x4 or 6x4 mats anyway. You also get some two-dimensional terrain. So as you can see here, we've some scrub, bushes, trees, a little bit of area terrain just to block line of sight. The other side of it is a set of shoals, so shallow drafts and unexpected reefs to put your ships in jeopardy as you play. The cardboard itself is about 1.5 mil, maybe even, yeah, probably 1.5, close to 2. So good sturdy cardboard. Nice satin finish on it and a really good print. High detail, nice depth. So you get a sheet of your terrain, and you also get a sheet of all of your relevant tokens. So there is a range ruler, 12 inch. You'll probably want a tape measure for long range cannon, artillery, that sort of thing. You've a wind marker to show what direction the wind is coming from. A turning gauge for your sloops. You even have a smoke or stink pot marker here. And then wounds, fatigue, fire, taking cover, running, all of the various status tokens you'll require in the game. These are double-sided as well. In most cases, it's just the same on the reverse, but in the case of the fatigue, it does go from 1 fatigue to 2, from 3 to 4, and so on. 5 and 6, substantially less available, but most of the time you won't need them because your ship's crew will tend to bug out by the time you sort of hit that amount of fatigue. They'll start scattering and fleeing for the horizon. We have a few more bits of card. We have the Bermuda and Balandra ship cards. So these are the two variants of sloop you can build. Here you see obviously the hit points, your areas of weaponry, the rigging, hull points, all of the things you want to keep tabs on while you're playing. And on the reverse has the standard characteristics for the two ships or boats. I suppose they're ships. Ships carry boats, they tell me. So those are handy reference sheets for those. We also have our two legendary commanders, so Edward Blackbeard Teach and Robert Maynard. Again, quick reference. So the points value, command range and points, special rules, and on the reverse, the actual explanations of those rules as well. So very handy when you're playing with those characters. The last pieces of card we have are two full decks of cards. So we've got one for the pirates, which I've not opened, and one for the British, which I have. Union flag there, pre-1801 Act of Union, I believe, when St. Patrick's Psalter was added. You can play this game with a standard deck of cards, including the jokers, but obviously these make it much easier to keep track of. So you have your action points depending on the card you play for the unit. So 2 actions or 3 actions for veterans, or for some of the other cards, it's substantially lower. So I think spades is, there you go, 1 or 2 actions instead of 2 or 3. And then the event cards as well. If you draw those, then there's a table to roll on to see if some untoward event has cropped up that may cause issues for your crew. So that's all our card. We do also have a set of dice. There is 12 D10. So it's a D10 based game. High being better. You have the skull and crossbones on the 10 symbol there. There's your 1, just so you can see. So a nice set of themed dice for the black flag there. Now, on to the fun stuff. Plastics. There are 2 black boxes, all shiny and bright. They contain the same sprues, so you get 2 of these boxes with a big Galvy bucket of sprue goodness. We have 4 for your ship, and then 2 sprues which are identical for your pirates. So let's have a close look at these. For your ship then, like I say, this can be built in one of 2 ways, either as the Bermuda or the Balandra. In both cases, they will be almost identical. You have a main hull in 2 sections. You've got your bow here, keel, your capstan for your anchor, the other half of your rudder on your, rudder, not keel, because we don't say that. Parts of a bilge pump here. So that forms the basis of the body. Detail's really good. Most of the sprue gates are on places that are out of the way. So for example, inside the frame of the gun ports or on the bottom or very top of the actual ship hull itself, which means they've got all the detail for the wood running throughout it without it being obscured or stressed. So that's really nice. We have the main deck. So here we have our stern, and then the deck itself and the upper deck at the rear of the ship. Again, you have things like the hatches well detailed and all of the wooden planking. For this part, it actually sits above this section on the ship itself, but we'll get into that in the build in a moment. Then we have our, I suppose, detail sprue. So masts, some rear detail, which can either be this sort of filigreed nameplate or this fake set of windows. You have the anchor, the rest of that bilge pump, the steer for the rudder itself. We have our little mermaid that goes on the front of the prow itself. And then you have, not sure what this planking is called, runs along the side of the ship and takes the rigging down for the rat lines. Again, the detail throughout is excellent. Really nice set of wood grain, which really stands out on things like the mast itself, the spars and the front bowsprit. You get to see that sort of wood grain, not just in lines, but actual wood grain ovals that you would expect to see if a large log has been pared down. The pirate sprue itself then. As you can see, you get 6 bodies and a variety of weaponry. So starting at the top, we have cutlasses, a spear, a variety of pistols, all of your arms, another spear, and then in the center we have muskets, a few more cutlass and axes, including things like powder or cartridge pouches. Well, they would be powder and shot at this stage. And then some scabbarded or sheathed weaponry as well. It is all numbered up. So hopefully you'll be able to see this. You may not. I may have to come in closer. But you get things like heads, hats, other accoutrements, arms, so A4, A2, C5, D2, E7. So they are spread around, which means you're going to have to pay attention when it comes to building to a certain extent. If I just go ahead and grab the build instructions, you can see here, rather than a traditional set of instructions that you might see with some companies, it's more an exploded diagram. So this is Firelock's first foray into multi-part plastics. Up until now, all they've done has been the resin chips and the single part miniatures in metal. So the exploded diagram's nice. I did run into some issues, I won't lie, when I was building. But like I say, it's the first time they've sort of experimented with this. So for example, here you can see body B1 uses arms B2, B3, B4, B5. And then it has a two-handed spear or a musket. So P54 and P52. So the way this works is B4 and B5 are a pair, and they take the spear. So the spear has a lower weapon number and the arms are a higher number. Whereas B2 and B3, the lower arm pair, actually take the higher weapon number. So the numbering system they've used It's all correct for the model. And I'm sure you can swap bits and pieces with these other models as well, once you start to know the layout of the sprue and how the miniatures go together. But I will say you'll want to dry fit everything when you're sort of first coming into it. Likewise, we have build instructions for the ship itself. And again, it's more an exploded diagram than an actual blow-by-blow build instruction. I'll bring in a built one in a moment anyway, but you can see here, it's relatively self-explanatory. Swivel guns go together on top of the mounts for them. The hatches cover the holes. The deck goes into the middle of the hull. It's not tricky. There are a couple of bits though, where you have alternative options. So the stern of the ship can have either or here. That's okay, but the front where you've got your mermaid, if you put on this smaller piece, she won't fit. So there's a little bit of learning to go with this, a little bit of wariness if you're not au fait with the period and the look of the ships themselves. What I will say is Blood and Pigment on their YouTube channel did a full build of one of the sloops, and it's tremendous help if you don't know what you're doing. It's worth checking them out. Speaking of which, here is the Bermuda sloop pretty much built. I'll set this down here for a moment, and we'll take you through it in a bit more detail before I get into the kit and caboodle of it. If you are interested, it is from prow to stern, approximately 10 3/4 inches, or about 27.5 centimeters, 275 mil, all the way from tip to tip. It is 18 inches, 450 mil long, and 13 inches tall, roughly 32.5, so 32.5 centimeters. It is a monumentally spectacular construction. I have left off the front mast and bowsprit so that I can get in and paint everything. But once they are painted, they can be then glued in and the seals attached. You will have to download the seals themselves. There's templates on the Firelock website. If I set those to one side, and we take a look at the ship itself. So let's remove some crew. We have 8 swivel guns, which I have not glued in yet. Swivel guns are optional. I'm toying with magnetizing them because I like to make life awkward for myself. But if I don't magnetize them, I just glue them straight onto these support struts, so they just have a simple point where they just attach. Let's just remove those. There are 8 cannon. They can be viewed as light cannon. 6 on the main deck, and then 2 astern. I'll pop these out as well. Take a closer look at those with the actual seaman. You have the capstan for the anchor, which you can actually build so it turns. And there's even a little ratchet mechanism on there, which is just darling. Totally unnecessary. And if you're going to be playing with this a lot, I suggest you glue that in a position where you can get around it without it breaking off. But really, really nice. That's for our anchor here. When it comes to the build itself, so if you look at the Blood and Pigment build, they suggest using elastic bands to hold it steady. I say that is definitely required because the way it's molded, the front prow spread slightly. It needed to be pulled in to actually get it to form to the deck. So you will need a bit of pressure on that. But the build itself, very, very simple. Went together very easily. As you can see, you've got a hatch here that can be left open. I've also got the 2 rear gun ports are closed. If you want to put cannon in there and open these gun ports, you can do this. However, this interior, which is all textured, as you've seen from the sprues, you'll need to paint that before you assemble it. So you'll need to glue this front hatch section on and then paint it all, and then glue this deck on when you're actually putting the pieces together, because the bow in the ship itself means once this is on, it's held in by the 2 sides, so you can't leave it off and glue the sides in, because you won't be able to fit this deck on anymore. The rigging, I'm not sure if they are, I don't think they are belaying pins, but the hooks for the rigging all glue in on the side. Again, when you're gluing them, the piece can be put around either direction. However, if you put it around the wrong way, it will interfere with your cannon port or your gun port. So you want to make sure that you have it spread so that your rigging isn't being shot to pieces. But yeah, I chose to put the fake windows on the back of this. But it could easily have been that little sort of filigreed nameplate instead. You have your rear lantern, and we have our mermaid at the front. It's a gorgeous piece of kit. When you're gluing your gun ports on, if you choose to glue them on, they should probably be up at a higher angle, probably more like 70 degrees. I've got some pictures of the Vasa, which has their gun ports open. However, they are very solid when glued out at a sort of a 90-degree angle, which probably isn't particularly accurate, but for gameplay, it doesn't make a difference, and it will help your kit survive rigors of handling. If you're going to be moving it around a lot, you might want to leave them off altogether. Also, it's difficult to see on the plan, but when you're building your ship, your gun ports, there are brackets and a iron ring. They should be on the interior. So when you open the gun ports, the top section is just completely flat. They would attach a rope to those rings so they could pull the gun ports closed again and fasten them shut when sailing. But yeah, really, really nice kit. Absolute dream to put together. We'll have a look at some of the actual fighting men now. Okay, so I've built 3. Like I say, the build went together very easily. For single hand weapons, it's not a particularly difficult build. You just follow what it says. Heads are on a flat neck, so I think the heads could actually be changed around a bit more than they suggest. Some have got more of a neck than others. So this gentleman here with the hunched shoulders has a long neck. This one has barely any, so some may look a little odd, but if you like your kit bashing, you can do a lot with them. Obviously, these can be pirates or British able sailors or sea dogs. I haven't built them all. Normally I would build a sprue's worth, but because we want to work out the factions and the fleet lists we're going to be using, I don't want to build too many of one type yet. But when you are building your force, depending on how large your force is, your minimum and maximum unit sizes change. So sub 100 points, you can have units that are 2 to 4 men strong. At 100 points, that goes to 3 to 8 men strong. And then for every 100 points after that, you add 1 to the minimum and 4 to the maximum unit size. So it means if you're building a lot of people with melee weapon and a brace of pistols, for example, in a small game, you might only have 4, but in a large game, you could potentially take a unit of 20 So it's important to know what you want to build and what works for you. Some of them also have weapon option upgrades, so they can replace their brace of pistols with a musket, that sort of thing. The kit allows you to build 4 muskets, 2 spear, and then a variety of either full-on brace of pistols or brace of pistols and melee weapons. So you have a lot of options that you can be dealing with there as well. The detail is very good. If you're used to heroic fantasy or science fiction where detail looks like it's been carved in with a chisel, you're not going to get that here. They're very realistic, well-proportioned miniatures. They come in at, where are we? 32 mil from base to eye level. So that gives you a sort of scale size. 1/56 is, I think, what they suggest this is. But they are realistically proportioned, no massive heads and hands here. So that larger scale allows them to be more realistic and accurately portrayed. I will say, when you're building them, cartridge and shot pouches, put those on first, and then things like your pistols that they can be festooned with, get them on before you start putting in the arms, because it gets a bit awkward to navigate around the arms. But otherwise, they're very easy to put together. The body being one piece with the torso and legs means you're only having to deal with arms and a head. So nice builds overall. They also all come with these rather fetching Firelock bases. You can see here they have decking built onto them. Obviously, if you want to have a more grass or land-based base for your miniature, you can just texture over the top of that. But they're slightly smaller than usual. I think they're 20 mil. They are 20 mil, which means you can easily fit them onto the deck of a ship. If you're using boats and sloops and the like, larger base will obviously restrict the amount of miniatures you can get on there and how easily they can move around the deck itself. Just going to bring in one of our little cannon. Like I say, there are 8 of these. It's a very simple build, but if you don't glue them down, you can also use them for land-based defences as well, if you plan on doing some invasions of the land. Our final sprue in the box is our commanders. So we have both Maynard and Blackbeard. Single sprue with both characters on it. As you can see, multi-part, but a particularly simple build once again. We have Maynard is legs, torso and arm, so just arm and head. You'll see part of the head, hat here, hand, pistol. Blackbeard's a bit more impressive. That face with his adorned beard, and then his mane of hair at the back. 2 legs going into the torso. So some really nice detail on this sprue. Currently, the only way you can get this sprue is in the Blackbeard versus Maynard box. It may be available later on separately, although no word on that yet. But if you are after these characters, then I believe there are metal versions as well. But otherwise, if you're after the plastic, then you're going to be getting them in the Blackbeard versus Maynard box set. So there we have it. Normally, don't talk price when I look at stuff like this, because it's subjective. You might find it in one country at a different price, or you can find it on online retailers at different prices. So there's no point in talking about price. However, I will talk about comparative price. Prior to this, if you got the 2-player starter set from Firelock for Blood and Plunder, you got the hardback rulebook, you got a couple of decks of cards, you may even get dice with it, I can't honestly remember, and then you got your 2 factions with metal miniatures, and it came at about $165. So a robust, chunky starter set. This one I've seen on the Firelock website at, I think, $145, so cheaper than the old starter set. You lose the hardback book in favour of a softback, and you gain 2 sloops plus all the tokens and the play mat. These have got to be worth the price of admission by themselves. They are superb. Whether you plan on playing with a friend or just using this to build a force right off the bat, because the 2 sloops, the pirate/sea dog sprue, can make so many. So you've got 24 models in there plus the 2 leaders. With the correct paint job, you could end up having 24 British with Maynard or 24 pirates with Blackbeard, so you could swap between the 2 as well quite easily. It's a really, really nice starter set, and hopefully it will open up the golden age of piracy to a lot more people. Anyway, let me know what you think below, folks. I'm going to move on. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.